A popular, well-known local celebrity news anchor doesn't show up for work one early morning. Her co-workers know within an hour of her not arriving to work that something is terribly wrong. Police head over to conduct a welfare check, and what they find leads to everyone's worst fears becoming a reality as a frantic search begins in Iowa for a woman loved by thousands of people. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 20 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. Certain television news shows, especially back in the 80s, 90s, and even into the early 2000s, gave us a sense of comfort and routine, I think. I'm talking about your local weekday news teams, which, in a way, we come to depend on as part of our morning regimen. We kind of develop relationships with these people and come to think of them as people we know within our communities. Jodi Huisentruit is one of those anchors from a local morning news team in Iowa with that warm, comforting, neighborly type of vibe. Jodi co-anchors the morning news show Daybreak on KIMT in Mason City, Iowa, north of Des Moines, not far from the Minnesota border. Mason City houses some 27,000 people. Daybreak begins at 6 a.m., yet Jodi, same as all those morning anchors and news people, need to be at the station by 3:30 a.m. in order to keep up the speed on the day's breaking news and go over the show's checklist of stories for the day. Doing local TV requires travel and relocation. Many starting out in the morning TV news business move far away from home in order to take a job. 27 years old in 1995, Jodi is from Long Prairie, Minnesota, which is about a 4-hour drive from Mason City. So Jodi is actually lucky in that regard. Home is not too far away. Jodi attended St. Cloud University. She has short-cropped blonde hair, just about to her neckline, remarkable, inviting eyes, and one of those smiles drawing you directly into her warmth, which is why Jodi makes such a successful anchor woman, loved admirably by her viewers. She feels like one of us and carries such a lovely, pleasant nature about her you don't get from just any news anchor. She seems genuine. It's not forced. Being a local TV journalist is not an easy job. You are expected to be everywhere at every major event and in many ways represent the community. It's as if you always have to be that local celebrity and on your game, no matter where you go in town. Someone is always going to recognize you and say hi. It's very early in the morning on Tuesday, June 27th, 1995. Jodi is at home preparing to not only head into the station, but thinking about that coming Saturday. Her best friend is getting married, and Jodi is one of the bridesmaids, a day she has been looking forward to for some time. As the 4 a.m. hour approaches, Jodi has not yet shown up for makeup and her daily production meeting, and the station manager is becoming concerned. Without the top anchor, there is no show. So one of Jodi's coworkers calls her to see what's up. "Oh, I overslept," she says. "I am on my way right now." Jodi lives in an apartment building about 1 mile away from the studio. So when she says she is on her way, that could mean 5, 10, 15 minutes tops, and she'll be walking through the door and getting herself prepped for the show. Another aspect of being a local celebrity news anchor and producer for the men and women in these jobs is obviously the potential for some viewers to become obsessed with you. You're a highly visible person within the local community. Unstable and even mentally ill people can sometimes feel as if they know these anchors personally, as if they are close friends, especially those anchors who have worked in a market for an extended period of time. Psychologists call it a parasocial relationship, basically a one-sided connection between a person watching or listening and a specific media figure. And the media figure, remember, is totally unaware of the person's existence. Part of it is the nature of celebrity and expected. Most of the time, it might feel creepy and weird for the celebrity, but it's rather harmless. In other situations, unidirectional emotional bonds can be taken to extremes, and obviously include stalking and harassment and obsession. So anchors and many TV people stay on alert and are constantly on the lookout, understanding that it comes with the territory. After that phone call to Jodi, within 15 minutes of her not showing up at the station, her team goes into utter panic mode. She should have been there by now. Then 5 a.m. arrives, still no Jodi, and they go from worrying about putting on a television program to worrying about Jodi's welfare. After calling and calling with no answer, there is no way she rolled over and fell back asleep. That is not Jodi. She's dependable, always on time, and responsible. Two psychologists in the 1950s, as soon as TV became widely available, realized the potential issue of that one-sided obsessive relationship and deemed it the illusion of intimacy. Explaining it further, they opined that a bond experienced by some, even despite the entire lack of any intimacy whatsoever reciprocated by the person on television, is a delusion for the most part and can become dangerous. Another aspect of this is that the parasocial relationship is less demanding, less hurtful, and can become anything that person experiencing it wants it to be. Today, of course, it is happening on social media on a much broader scale, where we have millions of people now putting themselves out there on a very intimate personal level in direct line of anyone in the world. Mason City Police get a call from Jodi's employer, KIMT, explaining what is going on. By now, it is 7:15. Still not a word or sign of Jodi. Everyone is deeply concerned. The station asks police to head over to her apartment and conduct a welfare check. Pulling in, police see Jodi's 1991 red Mazda Miata parked in the lot. So she must be home. Jodi loves the vehicle, which she had just bought a few weeks earlier. Walking over to the car, confirming the license plate, a concerning discovery. A red, high-heeled shoe sitting by itself a few feet from the driver's side front tire, leaning on its side on the ground. Nearby, the key to Jodi's vehicle is also on the ground. Not on a keychain, but all by itself. Close to those items, they then find a hairdryer and hair care products. When you're an investigator sent out to begin looking for someone, reported, not necessarily missing, but let's say not heard from in some time when that person was expected to be, your sense of observation is on high alert. By 8 a.m., it's clear Jodi is not inside her apartment, not at work, and nobody has heard from her. Those items found near her vehicle are incredibly alarming when placed into the context of what they know. Then, as they begin combing the area around Jodi's vehicle more closely, an even more alarming discovery. Drag marks on the ground, a disturbed area of gravel and grass near that. and personal items scattered about nearby. What's clear is that a struggle ensued. Then, a cop canvassing, talking to people in the apartment complex, comes up with something else. Several of Jodi's neighbors say they heard a female screaming near that time Jodi would have been leaving to head into the station. But not one of them called 911. Please subscribe to Crossing the Line wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review of the show, especially on Apple Podcasts. I'm doing this show independently now, free from any corporate or big podcasting media company involvement, which allows me to bring you more of the content you want to hear and have asked me for. This is completely our show. Reviews and subscriptions really help. You are my public relations and social media team now, and without your help, I could not do this. And that support, I must tell you, means everything. It's incredibly humbling. And I want to thank each one of you for listening. We can grow the show together, which will allow me to do even bigger things with it. If you go to crossingtheline.biz or mwilliamphelps.com, you can contact me there to suggest cases or just say hello. And look for me across all social media platforms at M. William Phelps. That's the @ symbol and my name, M. William Phelps. Be right back. As the morning continues, police in Mason City, Iowa, tow Jodi's car back to the lab so they can search for any prints, forensics, or trace evidence. Then head into Jodi's apartment to see if there is anything inside that can tell them what might have happened. It's obvious that something took place in the parking lot and some sort of scuffle went down, and Jodi is now gone. But you can't overlook the apartment. The abduction, and that's what they are working under at this time, could have began inside her apartment. As investigators work the apartment crime scene, others head over to the station. Immediately, Jodi's friends and co-workers suggest that perhaps an obsessed fan of the show, or even someone angry with something she might have reported, is behind her disappearance. Someone mentions that back about 9 months before, in October 1994, Jodi had told coworkers she thought she was being followed by a man in a black truck. The incident occurred while she had been out jogging one day. This, of course, is concerning to police. Several days go by and there is still no word from Jodi and no sign of her. That concern and worry turns to dread for family, friends, and coworkers. How can they not begin to think the worst? Mason City Police then hold a press conference. During that outreach to the community for information, they make it public that they are looking for a Ford Econoline van, white in color, likely a mid-'80s model. One of those long, large vehicles delivery and construction services use. They say someone passing by the parking lot to the apartment complex where they believe Jodi was abducted saw that vehicle in the parking lot. All of this is so terrifying for the community at large, many of whom feel a healthy connection to Jodi. It's as if everyone knows her and is feeling this loss themselves. A man then steps forward and tells police that he and Jodi are good friends and that he is likely the last person to have seen her. His name is John Vancis, a tall, balding, handsome guy with blue eyes and a charming smile. Quite a bit older than Jodi, John claims to have been with Jodi and one of her friends the night before Jodi vanished. They were hanging out and reminiscing about a birthday party he and her other friend surprised Jodi with. They watched a video of the party, he says. They talked, they ate, and that was it. Later, John tells CBS News, Jodi was like a daughter to me. She was like my own child. Behind the apartment complex where Jodi lives is the Winnebago River. During those early days, just after she disappears, the fire department does a wide sweep and search of the river, looking to see if maybe she was murdered and her body placed in the river. But they find nothing. Investigators don't know what to make yet of John Vancis. He seems to have put himself out there, and he rubs a few investigators the wrong way. They become so concerned about John, perhaps being involved in Jodi's abduction, they ask him to take a polygraph. He agrees, and he passes. Polygraphs, I'll say, are frowned upon by some who believe it is junk science, and of course, they are not allowed in court. But as a tool during the early stages of any investigation, polygraphs can help investigators stay on track with witnesses and potential persons of interest and get a good read on where they are with the truth. It's not rock-solid evidence, but just one more way to help investigators navigate their focus. Jodi's earrings were also found at the apartment complex crime scene, along with several other personal items scattered around. That's important. Jodi fought her abductor. In releasing that info, Mason City Police Captain Mike Halverson says, "We do not like what we found." Jodi is someone a co-worker tells the media in those early days you can always count on. Others say you knew when Jodi was in the room. She was always willing to do whatever it took to help the station, friends, co-workers. Ultimately, after a tedious search, police do not find any threatening or concerning letters from a fan or any indication someone was obsessed with and bothering Jodi. A reward of $11,000 is then offered for any information as June gives way to July and August 1995, and there is still no sign of Jodi. Hundreds of people have been interviewed. A prayer service is held. Tips are coming in. Helicopters are employed to search the entire area. But all of it leads to nothing. By September, over 800 people have been interviewed. That is significant, I can tell you, in these types of cases. The one other direction investigators begin to consider is that Jodi's case could be possibly connected to a series of disappearances in the general area over the past several years. The local FBI then gets involved to take a look at the possibility that several cases, including Jodi's, could be connected to one specific person of interest. In that regard, a special agent with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation comes out and says that they believe Jodi's abductor had been watching her, stalking her, and knew her routine quite well. I think that's a given. America's Most Wanted then picks up the case, and close to 60 tips from airing a segment on Jodi come in. As the winter of 1995 begins, investigators become very interested in a guy arrested in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, about 2 hours north of Mason City, charged with stalking an anchor woman out there. They head up to St. Louis Park and interview the guy. It's promising. This could fit. But they quickly rule him out of Jodi's disappearance. New searches continue. Jodi's family even speaks to a psychic in California. Unsolved Mysteries produces a segment. But none of it amounts to any new information. These are the scariest cases for investigators as they work them. So much outreach, so many interviews, so many tips, potential leads, potential suspects, and yet none of it goes anywhere. Frustrating doesn't even begin to describe what everyone is feeling. I think helpless is a good word here. In fact, years go by and nothing comes of the case. Jodi's employer held off long as it could with replacing her, hoping and hoping she would return and everything would be explained and her kidnapper taken into custody. But life has to go on. Sad as that feels to do, people need to continue. Doesn't mean you forget or you stop looking. Just means you are surviving in your own way, any way you can. In January 1999, a young woman, 19 years old, is stabbed in her Britt, Iowa home. Jackie Folkerts, a waitress, is found after she doesn't show up for her shift at the restaurant. Britt is a 45-minute or 30-mile drive directly west of Mason City, so it's not really that far when we're talking about abductions. Before Jackie had passed away, she had said something to her family that stirs up the investigation into Jodi's disappearance 4 years earlier. Quote, "A man who approached her in the restaurant about 3 weeks before her murder told Jackie he was the one who had something to do with Jodi's disappearance." When the guy showed up to the restaurant again 3 weeks later, Jackie was able to get his license plate number and write it down. I know I ask you this every week, but I just want to say something here. Since my Crossing the Line Presents limited series, 34 Fairview Road, has come out, we have been bad review bombed by people who don't want to face the truth in that case and who attack anyone who even questions that truth. So their leader has gone on to tell them to give the show bad reviews, 1-star reviews. And so that's what they did. I've inquired to Apple and other places about taking those reviews down because there are strict guidelines about that now, but it seems that it hasn't been done. So if you could, I'd appreciate a review of the show that reflects your opinion and your true feelings about what we're doing here. It would mean the world to me. I will be right back after a short break. That lead from the Britt, Iowa murder victim, Jackie Folkerts, it goes nowhere. Like every lead the Mason City police have investigated thus far. In March 2001, Jodi is declared legally dead. One lead that piqued my interest as I went through the case for this episode is from 1997. A guy named Tony Jackson had been arrested and charged with raping several women in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. But at the time Jodi went missing, this guy Jackson lived 2 blocks from where she worked at KIMT. Police did look into Jackson and tried to tie him to Jodi's disappearance. Afterwards, they come out and say this about him in 1999. After conducting a thorough investigation which included interviews, crime, lab analysis, records review, and polygraph examination, Tony Jackson is not considered at this time a viable suspect in the investigation. Jackson is serving life in Minnesota for those rape cases. Then, in 2018, Mason City Police serve and execute a search warrant to John Vancis, that older friend of Jodi's who claimed to have seen her the night before she vanished. John had named his boat after Jodi, it is later learned, and police release. John had shown up at the crime scene on the day Jodi disappeared. Though neither of those behaviors is a crime, investigators thought it was kind of strange. I'm kind of on the fence there with that. And the guy said he viewed Jodi as a daughter, so he was worried about her. That might put him at the crime scene. Of course, naming his boat after Jodi is paying homage to her. Important to note as well is that in a journal Jodi kept, she only has great things to say about John, and there is no indication that their relationship was anything other than a really great friendship. 72 years old at the time they execute that warrant, and now living in Arizona, the warrant focuses on John's vehicles and especially the GPS data. The warrant remains sealed to this day. In my opinion, if you're looking for GPS data specifically, as an investigator, you are looking at where the guy has traveled, which might point to where a body is. That is speculation, I want to be clear. But it is also clear they are looking to see how often this guy returned to Iowa after moving to Arizona 20 years before, and what were those places he visited when he was in town. John Vancis has denied any involvement in Jodi's disappearance. He has said this publicly many, many times. I am in no way pointing a finger here. But that sealed warrant says something about what Mason City investigators are thinking. You can't deny that. Lastly, this area is, for me, like walking on a tightrope. I mean, the guy has never been charged, has never gave any indication that he had anything to hide, and yet his name keeps popping up as a person of interest, mainly because he is 20 years older than Jodi, and they were friends, and he wandered onto the crime scene inquiring about what was going on. Sometimes what looks suspicious only appears that way because of the circumstances and in hindsight. Jodi hung out with this guy and her girlfriend. They were all good friends. Yet, that being said, 22 years after her disappearance, Mason City issues a search warrant, seals it. You cannot come at someone 22 years after an alleged crime in a likely murder case and hit them with a warrant unless there is serious probable cause. No judge is going to sign off on that. So we wait and we hope that Jodi's family can get some resolution and answers and bring Jodi back home where she belongs. The not knowing is torture for all of them. If you have any information about this case, visit findjodi.com and reach out to journalist Josh Benson, a dogged, determined, and incredible reporter who has done more work on this case than anybody else. You can also call Mason City Police directly at 641-421-3636 if you have any information. That's it for this week. I'll be back here next week with a new case. Check out 34 Fairview Road, my narrative podcast focused on the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the arrest of his girlfriend, Karen Reed, and my other series, Paper Ghosts. As always, I am so grateful for your support. Truly. I need your help. Please subscribe to Crossing the Line wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget, leave a review of the show, especially on Apple Podcasts, and log on to crossingtheline.biz or mwilliamphelps.com to contact me and suggest cases, or just say hi. And look for me across all social media platforms using the @ symbol and my name, M. William Phelps. Thank you for supporting this show. I am allowed to do it because of you, and that truly means more to me than I can say. Be safe, be aware. Sources for today's episode include findjodi.com. That website was extremely helpful as a resource, namely the timeline articles written by Josh Benson, news anchor at WFLA. So visit that site, look around. If you have any information, contact Josh. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinas, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.